Welcome everyone to another live stream. Very currently, I'm not coming away the most impressed here with modern software like Rust and Cargo. In my impression, modern software, I think Microsoft, macOS, but even open source stuff, Rust, Chromium, right? Unfortunately, more and more often so big you can't barely compile it, let alone fix, right? I thought, so what is the issue? The issue is we try to build Rust here ourselves, right, from source, like how you would want to build source. And after pouring already months of work in here, often live on YouTube over the last 3 years, I thought we have the most amazing Rust support in T2. I was actually relatively happy here with my achievement. After so much work, even cross-compiling, right, until the stuff breaks again here. And so what happens now is previously I had to modify, which also was already hours of work. I had to modify the Rust bootstrap because obviously we want to cross-compile it for all supported architectures, something that so few people do. And so the problem is the way this works here with this config toml, right? You build something, and also, so the topic to the video, in my opinion, software should also not be millions lines of code, right? Because they have the most amazing compiler technology. It's like, no, in my opinion, like Albert Einstein also famously once said or so, make stuff as minimal as possible, as simple as possible, and not simpler. So, and so this stuff is not simple, right? I mean, it would even be bad enough if it would be just Rust, but then there's also LVM and all the other hundreds of micro dependencies. So my point is, like, this is already a monumental mountain of clobbered together code that Bali builds. And then even this, the configuration stuff, right? So the big thing is, and the problem, my point is, then even how many people, like, just look at how many people Apple, Microsoft, Google have just, even the Fuchsia team, they allegedly partially fired now, so 400 or so of people. It's like, wow, they had 400 or so freaking people for Fuchsia. Didn't expect that, but you need already so many people. Sure, it's nice if you make systems so complex that you need whole teams of dozens or hundreds of people to maintain it. But it's like, yeah, it's sure not helping other people to use it, build it, and contribute it, right? So I had to, so the problem is also, and so the whole thing would not be no issue, right? If Rust and Cargo, you would just configure, make, install, and everything would be amazing, but no. This is such a huge infrastructure stuff. And although I put so much work into it, it again fails. And it fails here with error loading, host specification, could not find specification for target x86 T2 Linux GNU. And so the issue is, yes, it's a little bit caused by my own stuff here, but I only had to, so what we do now is we use our own Arch triplet of T2 because the Rust people are so almighty and amazing and stuff. For them, all Linux are unknown, right? So no matter if you like build any of the 1974 Linux distributions, they are all freaking unknown, right? Normally you would have x86 T2 or SUSE, Red Hat and stuff, you name it. But no, for Rust, they all are unknown because, nah, YOLO, whatever, who cares about Linux, right? Besides, I had to adapt our tools to use unknowns, like not the biggest of a deal. But the problem then was that for Bootstrap, so because they know everything better and reinvent the wheel, they have this bloody config toml stuff here. And so the problem was that they use here this x86, so they use this config names for specifying options. And so this is where the stuff broke. Because then you have, the issue is that you have two LVM versions. You have your host LVM version and your target LVM version. And if the name is the same, you can't specify different ones, right? You have here in the sections LVM and other things. And so ironically, for cross builds, it does work, and welcome everyone. But for native builds, like I had everything working, like cross-compiling for dozens of architectures, amazing stuff. And then where it failed was native builds, right? Native Bootstrap, because the issue is you can't have a different target unknown Linux GNU here to like your host is x86, but older, for example, glibc, right? Previous, like current stable GCC LVM Clang, but you want to build a new Rust Bootstrap is like, it's kind of cross-compiling, except the code can run on the host CPU, and you can't specify different versions here, right? So I had this problem. So ironically, cross-compiling worked, native Bootstrap failed if your glibc and stuff was not compatible enough. So I thought I worked around that, because I then, after fighting that for quite a while, I then simply patched, or like simply, I then decided to work around this. I used T2 because I thought, but I didn't stick this to the end. I patched all the Rust and Cargo stuff to support other non-unknown Linux. So basically our T2 Linux was the only Linux probably using vendored triplets like x86 ARM-T2, like not unknown, but T2. But the problem is now, so this worked great because I was building on my old workstation where I had like a Rust installed which defaulted to x86 unknown Linux. And this is where I didn't think this through. And this is also the complexity, right? This is so simple. And then imagine a million lines of complex compiler code, and this stuff already breaks at this configure stuff, right? I didn't think this through. So on my old workstation installation on here, this worked because my system, and so trivial stuff, right? My system had a Rust compiler that was x86 unknown Linux, right? So this is why this then worked if we target T2 Linux and like x86 T2 Linux. And I still use this unknown because I used unknown for this first Bootstrap, because it is anyway their default upstream vendor triplet. But now the issue is, so while I use this unknown as Bootstrap step to differentiate this potentially different LVM config, now it doesn't work anymore, because now my system, like fresh installation here from just the other day, it's like a brand new Linux. Linux can't get newer than that. And so now my Linux Rust defaults to x86 64 T2 Linux, because as I said, we are the only Linux to take Rust so seriously that we have a proper architecture. So the problem is now, I didn't think this through, right? Previously I thought, hey, easy, I use proper T2 and unknown as bootstrap strap. Now I have T2 in my system, and then this bloody bootstrap now breaks in a similar way. Like it breaks like similar how it's not the same. So now it breaks differently, because now it tries, and that is also my grief with this stuff, right? Why do I even make this video? Not only to tell you like that, in my opinion, this modern software is way too large. It becomes too big to too big to build, too big to fix. And the problem is I wasted another hour here. The problem is also I'm not telling Rust and Cargo to build this, right? And again, like reoccurringly, like with so many other shit, I tell Rust, hey, look, build this for x86 unknown Linux GNU, just how the Rust gods intended. And by the way, I want to target this for RISC-V 6442 Linux GNU, right? And so all this stuff could and should build and stuff, right? But all this monsters that they build, like with all the Python and Rust mixed, intertwined bootstrap stuff here, as if a million lines of LVM and stuff would not be enough. Of course, you need to create completely strange bootstrap glue code here. But so it builds here some stuff, Rust build or whatever. So far, so good. And now, look, it is doing something I didn't ask it to do, right? I asked this shit. I asked it to configure my build is x86 unknown Linux GNU, my host is unknown Linux GNU, my target is RISC-V and unknown Linux GNU. And so watch there is only T2 for RISC-V 64. And this monster of configure and bootstrap stuff, I mean, besides it's somehow trying to use here M64, probably trying to test something. I'm not really sure where this shit is coming from. I don't think it's from me so much to use some random stuff. Let's see what happens. But then it's building stage 0 standard artifacts for x86 T2 Linux GNU target, like from x86 _64 T2 Linux GNU to x86 underscore 64 links to. This is not freaking what I freaking asked it to do, right? And what is even worse, and then because this LVM is not in this config toml, because obviously that is not what I asked it to do, then it's like, yeah, you know what, you didn't have LVM in your config, because now I'm also even building your freaking LVM, which exactly what I carefully wired all up to use our system LVM, because obviously I don't want to build for 6 minutes each time, even though Epic thread ripping that, I don't really want to each time build 2,301 freaking files of LVM that I have already in my system. It means that even builds, because a million lines of code of LVM obviously built, but then this code further, it's like, yeah, you know what, now I'm using x86 64T2 Linux GNU, which I did again not ask it to use and then it says, yeah, didn't exit successfully because, you know what, this freshly built Rust compiler doesn't even freaking support x86 underscore 64T2 Linux GNU. It's like, so long story short, it's not what I ask it to do, right? This modern complexity, and then around millions of lines of code of LVM, Rust, C, and all the hundreds of micro dependencies, they construct bootstrapping configure stuff around. That's like, yeah, good luck debugging. I debugged already around here in this stuff, and the problem also, like, it's such a wild mix of languages. You can't like attach a debugger there, and like John Carmack in one of its famous interviews said, John Carmack of id Software and Doom and Quake and stuff, like, I like to step through my code once I've written new code. I like to step through it. Like, yeah, you can't even as advised and preferred by John Carmack step 3, because it's Python and stuff. I even patched here something. I thought it's I added this here, replacing it to. So my guess it's somehow at some point of time testing the Rust compiler. So I ask it, I want to build that, I want to target that, and then all this complexity, all this added complexity, you know what, I built something else for you. It's like, no, I didn't ask you for that. This will obviously not work. It doesn't work. It makes no sense. And it's like, yeah, thank you very much. And of course, the Rust people is like, yeah, you're using it wrong. You should just Rust up this stuff and not use your lousy, tiny little Linux distribution. But it's not as much as a criticism. By the way, this is intentional. Our sandbox is blocking their rights to out of the sandbox. My criticism is more, even this Rust stuff, not even in the Rust land, not everything is amazing. And in general, this attitude of over-engineering stuff, right? This is, instead of just building, I mean, it is already silly that I had to patch this Arch triplet stuff in there to begin with. But even when I patched everything, and then I thought, like, finally everything is freaking working. Then again, this configure and x.py, like, I'm not joking, this bloody bootstrap stuff, for whatever reason, is called xpy, because whatever. I don't know why they didn't call it bootstrap py, but it's for a decade x.py. But yeah, I need to. So what's up now? I need to investigate this even more. I wonder then if I really should patch this Arch triplet to T2, because when it now turns out that anyway, I didn't think it fully through, as so often with this complexity, you think, hey, I solved it so easily. It's like, yeah, it worked on one workstation. So much to, hey, it works for me. It's like, yeah, it doesn't work for someone else with slightly different configuration. So yeah, I confirm, or I realize my fix was not fully thought through, yet it took hours to implement, obviously. And yeah, so now I need to spend even more time debugging where it's freaking decides to build it. Excuse me, I still recover. And the other summary also, it is sad how much time not only I waste, but the whole industry, right? Think of all the thousands of people fired at Twitter, Microsoft, Facebook, Amazon, and everywhere. Thousands of developers each day waste their time and stuff to like sync Microsoft outage today, right? Network configuration and stuff. The whole day, thousands, hundreds, thousands of developers and stuff only do random bullshit because all the systems we built over decades are just random, broken, too big to work, to fix. And I really wish it would be like this one small fix. It's like, where should I even freaking find? Basically, you need... Sure, you could always try to make your life easy and fill an upstream bug report, but they usually like, yeah, YOLO, whatever, go away with your tiny little Linux distribution. Hope that other people fix it. Usually that, I mean, also I'm not like waiting days or weeks. I eventually want my fix in another day or two. But so basically I need to debug through even more bloody configuration Python glue here and understand what they're doing. The worst thing is they also have here additional Rust code, as far as I remember. Yeah, then you also start to grab around in all this code here and hope for the best. It's like, yeah, somewhere in there, like, it's probably somewhere. It always looks easy, but at the end you spend hours of debugging these complex systems just for, and only because it's automatically doing stuff that I'm not asking it to do, right? So yeah, in general, this Rust bootstrap of this multi-stage bootstrap, it's in my opinion anyway, bootstrapping too many stages always. I would much prefer if they would build Rust architect Rust in such a way that you can, with like last 12 months compiler, build a new one. Because in my opinion, so many cross rebuild bootstrapping stuff is anyway too much. But yeah, it is. Yeah, that's it for this video. It is frustrating. It's of course not the only thing. I recently tried to build a Linux kernel with Rust support, and that also failed, which is in bindings and crazy amounts of standard allocator sources and stuff they needed there, and then it still failed. I probably should try that again. But yeah, the future is crazy with this kind of complex systems. I previously only knew from like proprietary software like Microsoft's own Windows and Office and stuff, but now the open source people up each other with creating absolutely crazy amounts of complexity that it is just annoying. I don't. If I would work on a compiler, I would simply not create such a complexity. So even for me, like working on this stuff daily would not be fun, right? It would be pretty depressive to each day mess around in this absolutely speechless mountain of accumulated sources that are somehow like spaghetti messed together until something sometimes bootstraps. But anyway, just a tiny little bit frustrated update. Leave in the comments below what's your take. The craziest stuff is that I still have not figured out how to build two things. So of all the stuff you would think you can just build Rust Clippy and Rust Format, both of which do not just build, which I also find rather crazy. So if you're a Rust expert and want to tell me I'm just doing this wrong, Rust Format doesn't build because nightly features. Building Rust Format nightly needs Rust nightly compiler. So I have no idea why. Like, why is it even doing nightly? Why do they give me a release? Maybe this is easily fixable, but the Rust analyzer, was it analyzer or no, Clippy? So this has a similar issue. Is it also nightly? I mean, why is this Rust stuff doing this? You get some you think you got some releasing, maybe we don't, but then it's building stuff with dash set for nightly compiler, which I mean, normally I wouldn't want my system compiler, a nightly compiler. Probably I mean, Kansas. I mean, the crazy stuff is the Rust bootstrap that I was just fighting with has built-in support to compile Rust Clippy and Rust format. So yeah, anyway, this is somehow to sum it up, the whole ecosystem and distribution and stuff is somehow not the most developer friendly. As crazy as it is that developers, I don't know, is it intentionally that they don't want other people to work on this stuff and I was like, use our Rust up, and it's like, it's complicated, don't touch it. I don't know. Anyway, leave in the comments below. Don't forget to share, subscribe. I hope you learned something, and leave in the comments what's your take and experience and 2 cents to that.